Since the shock announcement that Oscar Piastri will replace Daniel Ricciardo in 2023, everyone's been asking, what will the lovable Aussie do now? He's been linked with every open seat on the grid, and as an 8-time race winner, you would think he would be the favourite for any seat on offer. But is Ricciardo in for a big comeback at a new team? Or are we now witnessing the last races the Honey Badger will ever participate in? Let's find out. Daniel Ricciardo has accepted the prospect of not finding an F1 seat for 2023 and insists he's not getting cocky about his future in the sport. The popular Australian is looking for his 6th team in Formula 1 after McLaren decided to end his contract a year early, with Oscar Piastri instead partnering Lando Norris in 2023. It leaves Ricciardo currently without a drive next year, with options limited, and the 33-year-old himself hasn't ruled out taking a year sabbatical away from the sport after 11.5 straight seasons. There is currently a vacant seat at Alpine, though Ricciardo's departure from Renault at the end of 2020 means a return is unlikely, while Haas could also be an option should Mick Schumacher's contract at the team not be renewed. Yet Ricciardo conceded he may not find a seat for next year, saying, "I've certainly accepted if I'm not on the grid next year, I'm okay with that. I've accepted that I'm not going to do everything, or my team's not going to do everything, just to put me on the grid if it's not right or doesn't make sense. Obviously, this is challenging, and if I'm on the grid, then I want to know that it's at a place that I can enjoy it and feel I can thrive, an environment I know I can thrive in." There has been talk of Ricciardo taking a reserve role at Mercedes next year, with their current reserve, Nick de Vries, likely to be signed by another team for a drive next season. For Daniel, though, it's all about finding the right fit for him. People may say the move to Renault was a mistake, but he obviously needed a new environment and seemed to fit incredibly well at Renault. He beat his teammate while there, and as we now know, the team were on an upward trajectory that has positioned them easily as the best of the rest. The mistake was the move to McLaren, where he was never going to be the main man. That is a mistake he wants to avoid again. "I don't want to just jump in a car for the sake of it," he added. Days like the Italian GP, where Ricciardo retired from top 10, are certainly pretty frustrating, but I'll get over it and try to understand what's best for next year. As I said, not in an overconfident or cocky way. If it's not meant to be, then I'm totally okay with that. I'm not going to be too proud. We certainly haven't given up on it, but that's where my head's at the moment. His fellow drivers have been quick to come out and back the Honey Badger for a drive in 2023. Lewis Hamilton is one of many to voice support for his fellow driver. When asked about the talk of the 33-year-old stepping back to a reserve role, potentially at Mercedes, Hamilton made his feelings clear that Ricciardo should be on the grid. "Well, I think he should be racing personally. I think he's far too talented, and he's earned the right to be among us racing," Hamilton commented. "Of course, if he's part of our team, it'd be great, but a third driver role is not really, I think, what's best for him. If I was managing him, he'd be racing. Lewis Hamilton isn't managing him, and I'm not sure how him being manager would actually make a difference. There are 3 teams that still have a space open though, and all of them are probably in contact with Daniel regarding a seat for next year. Alpine, Williams, and Haas are all a potential port of call for Ricciardo, but based on this year's performances, he would have a clear preference of one of the 3. Alpine have been by far the best of the 7 teams not competing for podiums this season. There is the big question of Pierre Gasly that still needs answering, who's apparently Alpine's favourite for the spot. But before Fernando Alonso was favourite and then Oscar Piastri, and we all know how that ended up, so don't be surprised if the same thing happens with Gasly. The team have also gone through changes since Ricciardo drove there 2 years ago, and unless Daniel can put in some incredible performances, Esteban Ocon would be the team's main man. That hasn't stopped Christian Horner from backing his former driver to secure a spot at the French team next year. Asked if he would take his former driver at the French manufacturer, Horner insisted, "I probably would, to be honest with you. They know him from a couple of seasons ago, and it was great together in his last season there, scoring podiums. He is the type of guy that I think you could rebuild him. It's not been a good experience for him for whatever reason, and you have just got to think back to some of the drives for us, some of the wins he had, the podiums and stunning overtakes he was capable of. That is still in there, I'm sure. He just needs a bit of a reset." After the season Daniel has had at McLaren, a lot of people would rightly be surprised if he managed to get a spot at the team's direct rival next year. Ricciardo struggled to hit the ground running at McLaren with issues in acclimating to last year's MCL 35M. And this year, he's had the exact same problem as well. But with the number of comments from Lando Norris saying how undrivable the car is, perhaps it isn't entirely Daniel's fault. Fortunes have rarely been reversed in Formula 1, but Horner is certain Ricciardo could still cut it at the high end. Like in all sports, confidence is a big element, and for whatever reason, he hasn't got the feeling from the car across 2 sets of regulations, he said. That has probably eked away at his confidence. There's still a capable driver in there, and you don't forget how to deliver. So I hope for him he gets another opportunity and gets himself back on the grid for next year. There may be plenty of support for Ricciardo in the paddock, but the wider F1 community don't seem quite so convinced. Perhaps those in the paddock don't want to spoil any relationship they have with Ricciardo, or maybe they know something about the driver that we don't. Apart from McLaren though, everyone seems to want him to stay, just not on their team. On just 19 points in 2022, Ricciardo is languishing in 14th on the driver's standings, while his teammate Lando Norris is the best of the rest in 7th on the standings, having scored 88 points so far this season. It's a bad sign for an F1 star to be so outperformed by their teammate, and has raised an uncomfortable question which could spell the end of his career. 1996 world champion Damon Hill said the drop-off in form will likely leave teams questioning if he's lost his speed. Danny's been such a fantastic character for our sport, effervescent and always smiling and stuff. But something's gone wrong, said Hill on Sky F1. Not only in his pace at McLaren, but also in his strategy for getting himself in a competitive car. Something fell through the cracks there, and let's hope he's come out smelling of roses somewhere and we see him back at the front. Asked if he would be worth being a reserve driver, Hill added, "I think there is some logic to that. If you're at least with a top team, even if you're in the wings and waiting for the right opportunity, you'll have information that's useful to another team perhaps potentially. But every team manager would be looking at him, and every team will be looking at him and asking, where's the pace gone? Is it coming back? And that's the big question mark. We don't know." In past seasons, Ricciardo would have been a shoo-in for a seat anywhere on the grid. This year though, the slowly growing pool of talent in F2 and INDYCAR is finally overflowing, and the floodgates look set to open. So many young drivers have been linked with seats after having outstanding seasons in the junior categories. Questions about the number of teams in Formula 1 are being asked, but the F1 management are holding firm in their view of the situation. Formula 1 President and CEO Stefano Domenicali has admitted there are not enough Formula 1 seats for great drivers such as Daniel Ricciardo, but believes the sport does not need any new teams, as there is a risk it would become too overcrowded. There are currently 10 teams and 20 seats in F1, which is fewer than most years in the sport's history, although a boom in popularity has significantly increased demand and interest in joining the grid. The number of talented drivers on the market have only made extra seats all the more valuable, and Domenicali told Sky Sports F1 the Australian is a great driver in a difficult moment in his career at McLaren, and that he hopes he can find his place. Despite this, the F1 boss is not keen to increase the number of teams on the grid, as he thinks the F1 eco-structure is perfectly balanced as it is. For now, Daniel should be doing everything he can to try and make a big comeback at Alpine, as the options elsewhere are unattractive and decreasing in number every week. Do you think Ricciardo will make it into Alpine's empty seat next year? If not, where will he go? Let us know in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.